My son shoved the door open and shouted, "Old lady, this isn't your home anymore." My wife stumbled down the porch steps, grocery bag tearing. I sat frozen in my wheelchair, my hands shaking on the armrest. "Don't do this," I whispered, but he kicked my chair and I fell sideways onto the floorboards. No one moved. His wife stood in the doorway watching. Who had filled his heart with this poison? Why humiliate us here? And what power did they think I'd lost? This isn't just a story. It's the truth that often stays buried inside our homes. If you're ready to face that truth, then subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. He stepped over my body like I was a rug. Not once did he bend to check if I was okay. Instead, he adjusted his belt buckle and glanced back at his wife, who leaned casually against the doorframe with a smirk carved deep into her lipstick. My ribs ached from the fall. My arm trembled trying to brace my weight as I reached for the edge of the wheelchair. The metal burned hot from the sun, and for a second I didn't think I'd make it back up. Then came his voice, flat, rehearsed, venom-dipped. "You can leave too, old man. Or stay quiet. But this is my house now." I froze in place, knees bruised, hand gripping the wheel. His tone didn't rise. It didn't have to. It cut through the autumn air sharper than the cold. His wife didn't blink. She just took a sip of her coffee, eyes locked on mine like this was a performance and I was the pathetic side act. I said, "Did you hear me?" "I heard you," my voice cracked. "This was your mother's house too." "Don't forget that," he shrugged. "She's been gone for years." "And your new one?" "She's not family. She's a squatter." That word. Squatter. Like my wife had just drifted in through a broken window instead of standing beside me for 10 honest years, washing dishes in that kitchen, planting roses in that front yard. I wheeled backward slowly, not from shame but strategy. I needed air. I needed witnesses. Across the street, Mr. Clemens stopped mowing his lawn. His hands rested on the mower, mouth open, eyes locked on us. I saw 2 teenagers across the sidewalk pause their bikes. One pulled out a phone, and yet not a soul moved to help me up. Not one came forward. My son stepped off the porch, wiped imaginary dust from his shirt, and flicked his car keys around his finger. "Garage is getting cleared out tonight. That's where your chair's going." "Bedroom's already taken." He was moving fast now, taking over spaces, dismantling memories like boxes in a yard sale. "What happened to you?" I asked. "You happened," he snapped. "You brought that woman in. You rewrote the will. You forgot who built this family." I stared at him, my only child, and all I could see was the boy who used to leave Father's Day cards on my pillow, the kid who asked me to read bedtime stories twice just so he could fall asleep to my voice. But now that voice meant nothing. To him, I was just a name on a deed he thought he could delete. Inside the wheelchair drawer, my fingers touched the soft velvet box. I didn't open it, not yet, but the metal inside, the one I earned crawling through mud and fire in Vietnam, was the only thing I still had that no signature could steal. His wife leaned forward and said, "We'll bring you breakfast in the garage, as long as you behave." That was the moment something broke, not in me but around me, because even the wind felt like it stopped just to listen. I turned my chair around slowly, wheeling back toward the mailbox. The sun hit the porch, lighting up the area where my wife had dropped the groceries. Cans rolled across the steps like forgotten marbles. The bread was crushed under someone's boot print. He didn't even try to clean it up. That night, I heard them moving boxes into my room, while I lay silent in the hallway. The next morning, I woke to the sound of furniture scraping across hardwood. Not slowly, not thoughtfully, the kind of scraping that says, "We live here now and we don't care who hears it." I didn't need to see to know what it was. They were moving into my bedroom. From the hallway, I watched my own dresser roll past. My wife's perfume bottle clinked on top, still half full. No one looked at me. Not him, not her. It was like I was invisible now, just a relic in a hallway. When I tried to wheel forward, I found the front door wide open, and there, standing proudly on the porch like a man giving a political speech, was my son. In his hand, a folder. Yellow, thick, labeled with my name. He raised it high. "You want to play smart, old man?" he shouted. "Let's talk facts." I wheeled out slowly. The sun was bright, too bright. My eyes burned from the light and the rage, but I said nothing. "This house," he announced, holding up a deed, "no longer has your name on it. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. You gave me power of attorney when you had your heart surgery, remember? Temporary, you said, but we updated the deed that week. Consolidated assets into the family trust. And guess what, Dad? You're not listed. Across the street, Mr. Clemens had come back outside with his dog. This time, he wasn't even pretending to do yard work. 2 more neighbors stood near their driveways, not saying a word. One woman clutched a newspaper, frozen. You forged it? I said finally, my voice calm. He grinned. No, I filed it. Lawyer helped me. And you signed it. You were on painkillers, but you signed. You used me when I couldn't even think straight. That's what family's for, he snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. To protect the legacy. You gave up yours the day you married that woman. I should have seen it. The shift in his tone. The rehearsed lines. This wasn't the rage of a wounded son. It was the strategy of a man who'd planned everything. He wasn't just reacting. He was executing, and the worst part? The neighbors didn't step in. Not one of them. You can stay in the house until the review is over, he said. But she's not allowed back. We filed a civil trespass. She steps foot here again, she gets charged. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. Then he stepped closer. Held out the folder like a trophy. Look at it. Your name's gone. I took it. My hands shook. Inside was a copy of the deed. County seal. Highlighted lines. Next to owners was only one name, his. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the paper in his face. But I didn't. I just wheeled back inside, folder on my lap. War medal now resting on top of it. Dented, silent, but heavier than ever. As I rolled back toward the hallway, I saw his wife out of the corner of my eye. She was in the kitchen, laughing. A soft ding came from the hallway table. My phone, 1 missed call, from my wife. I picked up. Her voice was shaky but quiet. They froze everything, she whispered. I just tried to buy gas. The card declined. The teller said the account no longer exists. I didn't answer. I couldn't, she whispered again. What's happening? I looked down at the deed in my lap and saw my signature on something I never remembered signing. He drained every dollar I ever earned, using a password I gave him when I was sick. I spent half that night staring at the folder on my lap. The deed sat there like a verdict, legal, stamped, cold, my name and erased. Hisn't engraved like a knife in the paper, and just beneath it, tucked accidentally inside, a second page. Banking access forms. Power of attorney. Temporary authorization. Signed by me 5 years ago when I couldn't even hold a pen straight. And now that one kindness had cost me everything. I gripped the arms of my wheelchair tighter. Rolled into the living room. The TV played something I didn't recognize. Reality show. Fake drama. Meanwhile, the real one sat in the next room, counting my money. I opened the banking app on my phone. Balance. 621. I blinked. Reloaded. Same result. The savings account. Gone. Joint checking. Quite closed. I called the bank. The voice on the line was polite. Too polite. Almost guilty, sir. The authorized user transferred the funds to a personal account listed as Family Emergency Reserves. Since the account had full access, that's my money, I interrupted. Yes. But the signatory, I was recovering from heart surgery when I signed those papers. He wasn't supposed to keep them. There was a pause. I'm sorry, sir. But legally, he did. My chest felt tight. I looked down at the velvet metal box resting near my hip, the lid half closed. I opened it slowly. The bronze glinted under the overhead light. Scratched now. I hadn't noticed before. Probably chipped when I hit the porch floor. That metal had survived 2 tours in the jungle. But not my son's pride. The chair creaked beneath me as I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The same roof I built with my own hands 30 years ago. The same one my son was now selling beam by beam to fund his wife's redesigns. A knock rattled the front door. I didn't move. Seconds later it creaked open, and without permission. His voice followed. Cheerful, artificial. Morning, old man. Just so you know, we'll be upgrading the kitchen. She wants granite. The card should cover it. I didn't turn around. He walked closer. You hear me? I saw the account. He chuckled. You should be proud. That money's building your legacy. I turned slowly in the chair, facing him. No. That money was supposed to protect your mother's memory and your stepmother's health. You used it to buy a couch. She's not my mother, he said coldly. She never will be. Neither is that woman in your bed a wife. She's a mirror, and she reflects your worst side. He flinched. For the first time. He flinched, but only for a second. He held up a set of keys. My truck keys. You don't drive anymore anyway, he said. We'll put it to better use. Then he tossed them on the table and walked out. 15 minutes later, my wife called again. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "The hospital just canceled my surgery. They said we don't have insurance." The next time I rolled into the living room, I found strangers sitting on my couch. 3 men, mid-30s, wearing construction vests, sipping from my mugs like it was a break room. They didn't stand. They didn't smile. One of them even had his feet on the coffee table I built from scratch back in '93. "Don't mind them," my son said, walking in with blueprints in his hand. "They're here to measure the place. We're thinking of knocking down the wall to open up the space." He didn't ask, he didn't explain. He just announced it like I was some tenant renting a room. "This is my house now," he added, loud enough for them all to hear. I glanced toward the wall he mentioned. It was the one with the portrait of my late wife. The real one. The woman who helped me paint that very room the summer he left for college. Her eyes stared back at me from that frame. Silent. Watching. "I want that wall left alone," I said. He didn't even look up from the blueprints. "It's not up to you anymore." I turned toward the workers. "Do you know whose house this is?" They exchanged looks. The one with the boots on the table shifted, then stood. "Sir," he said, "we were told the homeowner approved this. Is that not the case?" My son cut in, stepping between us. "He's my father. He's under stress." "You keep working," the words landed hard. Under stress. Not disabled, not defiant, just unstable. That's what he was painting me as. Slowly, carefully, laying the groundwork, because if I ever fought back, he'd already written the story. I wheeled into the dining room and found the table stripped. No place settings, no photo albums, no centerpiece, just echo and dust. At the end of the table, a woman sat quietly, his wife. She was reading a bank statement. My bank statement? It was printed, annotated, underlined. "You took my mail?" I asked. She didn't look up. "I pay the mortgage now," she replied flatly. I didn't argue. Not yet. I rolled past her into the hall. That's when I saw the stack of boxes outside my bedroom, labeled Dad's old stuff. He was moving me out, piece by piece. I reached down and opened the top box. War novels. Socks. The old alarm clock I kept beside my bed for decades. All dumped like leftovers. And then, beneath a layer of shirts, a folder. It wasn't mine, I pulled it out. Inside were printed emails between my son and an attorney. Date, 3 months before my heart surgery. Subject, deed modification request. Contingency plan in case of incapacity. Attached, PDF file titled Draft Will Revision. My heart stilled. This wasn't just a reaction. This wasn't him losing control. This was planned, 3 months before I even signed anything, before I got sick, before I gave him power of attorney. He'd prepared a version of my will, before he knew I would be vulnerable. And the name on the email? Not just my son's, her brother. A paralegal. I gripped the arms of my chair until my knuckles turned white. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was legal, coordinated, family-wide. That night I opened the velvet box, held the medal in my hand, and locked it in the safe. This war was just beginning. They sent someone to check if I was still mentally fit. While I was in my own kitchen, I was buttering a slice of toast when I heard the knock. Firm. Official. Not the kind neighbors use. The kind government uses. I wheeled to the front door slowly, unsure what waited on the other side. When I opened it, a woman in a beige coat and clipboard smiled. "Mr. Harris, my name is Lynn. I'm a state wellness investigator. Just a quick in-home check, sir." I blinked. She smiled wider. "We received a concern from your family, a report claiming early-stage confusion, neglect of hygiene, and potential self-harm risk." She said it like she was reading off a script, and maybe she was, because I knew exactly who had handed her that script. Behind me, my son stood leaning on the stair rail. "We're just doing what's best for him," he called out casually. "He's been forgetting things. Burned toast last week." Almost rolled into traffic once. The woman scribbled something. I tightened my grip on the wheel of my chair. Do I look unstable to you? I asked, looking her dead in the eye. She paused. No, sir, she admitted. But protocol is protocol. She spent the next 30 minutes asking me questions. Date, name, address, medication. I answered everyone clearly, slowly, like a man who'd seen war and lived long enough to recognize another kind of battlefield. By the end, she didn't look so confident, but it didn't matter, because protocol isn't about truth, it's about paper. She handed me a brochure, In-Home Senior Transitioning Services. She handed him a copy too. He smiled and said, Thanks. We'll review it as a family. I didn't say a word. I just watched her leave. But the fallout wasn't done yet. Later that afternoon, I went to pick up my prescription at the pharmacy. The tech behind the counter froze when he saw my name. I think there's an issue. What kind of issue? He swallowed. According to our records, your plan was deactivated this morning. You've been moved under dependent status. Dependent? I echoed. On who? He turned the screen around. Name listed under primary. My son. The moment landed like a bullet in the chest. The tech avoided eye contact as I wheeled myself backward, head spinning. When I got home, the mailbox flag was down. Someone had already checked it. Inside, a letter addressed to me from the county clerk's office. Petition for adult guardianship hearing. Filed by Jared Harris, son. Hearing date, next week. Reason cited, progressive mental decline and inability to manage affairs. No mention of the money he drained, no mention of the surgery he canceled, just words. Written by a liar who still called me dad while stealing my name. That night I pulled the medal from the safe, set it on the table, looked at it. It was mine. Earned, not gifted, and I wouldn't let them erase me. Just before midnight, the doorbell rang, and when I opened it, my old lawyer stood there and said, I think it's time we talk. Off the record. Their credit card declined at the supermarket. I had just pressed cancel. I watched him from the kitchen window the next morning, strutting to his car like nothing had changed. He had no idea the clock had started ticking, and it was his own father who wound it. The night before, my lawyer laid out the facts on the table, literally, page after page. I had enough to begin pulling strings. Not all at once. That would be too easy. No, this kind of lesson had to bleed in slowly. The first thing we do, he said, is cut the line they've been chewing on. It started with the utilities. He showed me how to log in and remove their names from the account profiles. Water, electricity, Wi-Fi, all of it was still in my name. Wait for it, he grinned. They'll panic faster than you think. Then we moved on to the accounts. One of them, the one tied to the groceries, the gas cards, the Uber Eats orders, was a sub-account under my pension card. I closed it while staring at the medal sitting on the table beside me. He used my service check to feed his wife's skincare obsession. Not anymore. That evening, I sat in my chair back straight, watching the house settle like a storm gathering strength. Then I heard it. The first click. Microwave died. A pause. Then the hallway light flickered, and finally, the yell. What the hell happened to the Wi-Fi? It was like watching a spoiled child's world crumble in slow motion. I wheeled into the living room and found them standing in front of the router, confused like tourists without a map. What's wrong? I asked innocently. The internet's down, he snapped. Huh, must be an outage. His wife glared at me. Later that night I heard the front door slam. They were heading to the store, probably to recharge, buy time, pretend nothing had changed. But at that very moment I pressed suspend on the card and waited. 10 minutes later I got a text from the bank. Declined. I could almost hear the beeping at the register. They came back quieter. Not angry yet, just confused. The real anger came the next morning when the car wouldn't start. That one stung. Because that truck had been mine. He'd taken it when I couldn't drive anymore, said he'd keep it warm, but the lease was still in my name. And I'd canceled it. When the tow truck came, he ran outside in pajama pants, waving his arms. This is illegal, he shouted. No, sir, the driver said calmly. It's a voluntary repossession. Owner canceled the lease. I am the owner. Not according to this. I watched from the porch. He didn't even look back at me. He just stood there while the truck he claimed rolled off the property. And then, just to twist the knife, the mail arrived. A package for me. Labeled from the insurance company. Inside, refund check for overpaid utilities. Addressed to me. Symbolic object. War medal now polished. Placed back inside its box, but this time resting in full view on the fireplace mantel. It wasn't hiding anymore. Either was I. That night I called my wife. I shut them off. She was silent for a moment. Then softly, "Are you okay?" "No," I said, "but I'm getting there." The next morning I opened the front door and found a police officer waiting on the porch. He looked at me and said, "We got a call. Your son says you're threatening the household. What would you shut off first, money, power, or silence?" The badge caught the sunlight as the officer stepped onto the porch. I didn't move. "Mr. Harris," he said, voice firm but not unkind. "We received a complaint from this address. Allegations of elder-on-elder abuse, weapon presence, and mental instability." I blinked slowly. "I'm the elder," I said. He didn't smile. "Sir, may I come inside?" Behind him, my son stood halfway in the doorway, face painted in fake concern. His wife hovered behind him, phone in hand, pretending to film for documentation. Of course. Always for the record, I moved my chair aside. "Come in." Inside, he glanced around like a man searching for trouble, anything that could be twisted into a threat. His hand hovered near his holster. "There was mention of a gun," he said. "I don't own one. We'll need to check." "Of course," I said. They walked through the house like inspectors looking for ghosts. Every photo on the wall, every drawer, every cabinet. They opened the safe but found only the war medal resting in its box, now clean and whole. He picked it up gently. "You served?" "Yes." "Where?" "Vietnam. 2 tours." He nodded, and for a moment something shifted in his posture, but it didn't last. He returned to his duty, asking questions I'd already answered for the wellness check just days ago. This time, though, it wasn't just about confusion. It was about fear. "Did you threaten anyone in the house, sir?" "No." "Did you make any verbal statements about harming yourself or others?" "No." "Did you revoke access to finances to deliberately cause stress?" I looked him straight in the eye. I stopped paying for my own exploitation. He blinked. Behind him, my son scoffed. "He's losing it, man. You should have seen him yesterday." "He threw things." The officer turned to me. "Did you?" I reached into the drawer beside my chair, pulled out the receipt logs, and handed them to him. Every transaction, every bill I paid, every cut I made, right there. He looked them over in silence. "You have your faculties, Mr. Harris, no doubt about that." Then came the twist. "However," he added, "since this is a reported concern, I'm required to make a note. And if there's a second call, we'll have to escalate." "Even if the first one was a lie?" I asked. He didn't answer. Because in this country it doesn't take a crime. Just a pattern, a fake one. He left 15 minutes later with a report in hand, a hollow apology in his eyes. My son didn't look at me when he shut the door, but his wife did, and she smiled, the kind of smile you give when you know the fire. Alarm is about to go off, not because there's smoke, but because you pulled the trigger. I sat in silence most of that afternoon, until the mail arrived. A single envelope, no return address. Inside, a printed screenshot of a Craigslist post. Elderly father. Unstable, refuses care, threatening behavior. Prayers appreciated. Photo attached, me in my chair, taken from behind the curtain. They were building a digital story now, a public one. One more bad day and they could push the guardianship through, or worse, have me removed. That night I found a tiny red light blinking from inside my bedroom clock. A hidden camera. Sunday morning came dressed in silence. No arguments. No slammed doors. No power plays. Just the sound of shoes on wood floors and my son's voice telling his wife, "Let's make an appearance." And because that's all church was to them now, a stage, they didn't ask if I was going. They didn't think I could, but I showed. A wheelchair loaded into the van by an old friend, who still remembered my name, Harold from down the road. Vietnam vet. Quiet. Loyal. He didn't say a word when I told him where I needed to be. Just nodded, hands steady on the wheel. The church foyer smelled like pine and coffee. I hadn't been in months, and yet when I rolled in, heads turned, some out of habit, some out of shame. The pew where I used to sit was full now, taken by a family who wore matching jackets and two big smiles. I found a spot in the back. Silent watching service began, songs played, prayers echoed, and then came testimony time. That's when she stood, Miss Bernice, 78 years old. Lived across the street for 45 of them. Cane in hand, hat tilted perfectly, she walked slowly to the pulpit. I wasn't planning to speak, she said, voice shaking slightly. But the Lord told me. Sometimes the truth has to get loud. The sanctuary fell silent. I seen something, a few weeks back. Something no one else helped with. Something I can't unsee. My hands gripped the wheels. I saw him, she said, pointing to me, lying on the porch, after being kicked out of his own house. And I saw his son step over him like he was trash. Gasps. Literal, honest gasps, she continued. I saw his wife cry on the steps, holding groceries, and not a single person helped. People shifted in their seats, and then she looked straight at Pastor Jeremy. And I told you, Pastor. I told you in private. And you told me to pray on it. Well, I did. And now I'm telling the whole church, murmurs, heads turning, whispers rising. She looked at me then, her eyes wet but blazing. You ain't the villain they say you are, Mr. Harris. And it's time folks stop pretending they don't know what's happening. I didn't move. Couldn't. Then came the next wave. People started standing. One woman put her hand over her heart. Another whispered, I wondered why we hadn't seen his wife. My son, seated 2 rows up, stiffened. His wife's hand slipped from his. Pastor Jeremy stepped forward, clearly rattled. He cleared his throat. Let's pray. But the damage was done. The silence that had protected them for months had just been shattered. After service, while I waited for Harold to bring the van, a teenage boy came up to me. Quiet. Nervous. My dad filmed something, he whispered, from our window. The day you fell, we didn't know what to do, but I can send it to you. He held out his phone, and there it was, a shaky video. My wife dropping the bag, me falling sideways out of my chair, my son stepping over me, his wife watching. But most of all, the silence around them, a whole neighborhood, pretending not to see. That night I gave the footage to my lawyer and he said, it's time we file our own motion, and I'm bringing the press. Has someone ever twisted the truth so far, that you had to fight just to prove you're not the villain? The courthouse wasn't built for wheelchairs, not really. The ramp was too steep. The doors too heavy. The waiting room too narrow, but that didn't stop me. I wore a charcoal suit, tie knotted tight. And for the first time in years, I pinned my medal to my chest when not for vanity, but for truth. I had fought one war for my country. Now I was fighting one for my name. My son arrived late. No tie. His wife chewed gum in the hallway like she was waiting for a bus. When they saw me, they didn't say a word, just exchanged a glance, nervous, brief. Inside the hearing room, the judge called the session to order. Petition for adult guardianship, he read aloud. Filed by Jared Harris against Franklin Harris, citing cognitive decline, fiscal recklessness, and household conflict. He looked up. Mr. Harris, do you understand the nature of this hearing? I do, I said. But I didn't come here to explain myself. I came to correct the record. My lawyer stood beside me, briefcase already open. The documents were stacked high, labeled, and dated. We started with the footage. A flat screen rolled into the room, and with a single press, the video began. The courtroom watched, no commentary needed. As I was kicked back in my chair, fell sideways, and lay there ignored. The same son who claimed to be my caretaker was seen stepping over me. The judge didn't blink. Then came the bank logs. Withdrawals from our joint accounts. Every charge tied to his wife's email. Every dollar spent. And next to that, screenshots of our power of attorney agreement. Labeled temporary, never renewed, never extended. My lawyer turned pages like a symphony, calm, sharp, precise. The judge looked at my son. You used this document to modify the deed? I was advised it was within legal bounds. By whom? My wife's brother, who is not a licensed attorney. A pause. No, he admitted. He's a paralegal. Silence. Then my lawyer handed the judge a final folder, the original will, the one my son never expected me to still have. Dated, notarized, sealed in a safety box only I had access to. Inside, a single page clearly stating that in the event of my incapacitation, all decision-making would revert to the court after 6 months. That 6 months had passed a long time ago, but they'd kept spending. The judge sighed. "Mr. Jared Harris, your motion for guardianship is denied." My son stiffened. "In fact," the judge continued, "I am ordering an independent audit of all financial activity linked to your father's accounts, home, and care. You are not his guardian. You are not his trustee. You have no legal standing to represent him in any capacity." He turned to me. "Mr. Harris, we can begin proceedings to restore all property and accounts. Do you wish to continue?" I nodded once. "I do." As the courtroom cleared, I watched my son for any sign of apology. There was none, but his wife. She looked shaken, not out of guilt, but because the game had shifted. And she wasn't holding the dice anymore. Outside, reporters waited. The story had leaked. Local veteran fights back after son's betrayal. Microphones hovered. Questions flew, but I just said one sentence: "I'm not angry. I'm alive." That night, the judge's audit froze every account in my son's name, and creditors started calling their phones nonstop. The audit report came in like a slow-motion wreck. Every week, my lawyer forwarded me updates, and every week my son's image fractured further. He wasn't just careless. He wasn't just entitled. He was a full-blown financial ghost. No employment records, no tax filings in his name since 2022. No legal income source outside of my pension, my Social Security, my medical reimbursements. He hadn't built a thing, just siphoned. Turns out even the truck he bragged about was registered under a shell company, created 2 years ago and shut down within 6 months. Fake invoices, fake expenses, and not a single client who existed outside his own household. They'd built a house of cards on my foundation, and now the wind was coming. The court's freeze order halted everything. No bank access, no credit lines, no online transfers. His phone plan was cut. Their utilities went dark again. The silence became deafening until the calls started, one from a collections agency, another from a personal loan service, and then, most humiliating of all, from the private preschool his wife had already applied to for their future child. Except there was no child, just a plan to expand the family. Once the house is fully in our name, now they were living in my house, without heat, without cash, without reputation, and still, they said nothing to me, but I heard them through the vents. At night, arguing, shouting, she accusing him of being sloppy, he yelling that she promised this would be clean. Turns out, love built on theft doesn't hold up under pressure. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. But I did breathe deeper. The day after the audit finalized, I received a letter from the State Veterans Office. They'd read about the hearing. They were requesting to honor me with a civic award for integrity and senior independence. Funny. I didn't feel brave, just tired, but that tiredness carried weight now. That same afternoon, a man from the local hardware store came by. Young kid. Tattoos. Quiet. He held a receipt for $200 and refunded from a canceled order under my son's name. "I figured it was yours," he said, scratching his neck. He said he was renovating the place. Didn't know he was stealing it. I took the receipt. On the back, the kid had written, "We see you. Mr. Harris, you're not alone." That was the first time in months I felt the porch was mine again. The air, the light, the sky overhead, it all stopped feeling stolen. Symbolic object. The war medal now displayed in a glass shadow box on the hallway wall, next to a framed photo of my late wife, the one they tried to take down. This was her house too. They just didn't want to remember that. That night I donated my son's old bedroom furniture to the same veterans shelter I used to volunteer at. The director came to pick it up himself. "You sure you don't want to store it?" he asked. "I've been storing things that don't serve me for too long," I replied. The next morning, I opened the local paper and saw a classified ad. Used furniture, designer clothes, high heels, ring for sale, cash only. The contact name, my daughter-in-law's maiden name. The church bulletin board had always been the town's real newspaper. Birth announcements, bake sales, memorial flowers. But this week, one line stood out. Community spotlight. Franklin Harris, veteran, father, fighter. Someone had submitted my name. Probably Miss Bernice, maybe Pastor Jeremy. It didn't matter. What mattered was that someone remembered me before I was erased. That Sunday, I didn't sit in the back. I rolled into the front row, alone, and found my name carved back onto the wooden plaque on the pew. They'd sanded off the cheap plastic insert my son had replaced it with. The real one, and the one my wife had ordered 15 years ago, was back. And when the congregation stood for worship, I stood too. Not with legs, with pride. Across the aisle, I saw people nod. Not pitying nods, respectful, quiet and honest. Word had spread, more than I expected. That same afternoon, the small-town newspaper ran a half-page spread. Veteran father reclaims dignity after betrayal. Local resident Franklin Harris regains control of home after shocking legal battle initiated by son. There was a photo from the court steps. Me in my suit, metal shining. Lawyer by my side. No quotes from my son, just the facts, and once again the silence returned. But this time it belonged to them. They stopped going to church. The shades in my house stayed drawn on their side. Groceries stopped appearing. The Wi-Fi password was changed again, but not by me. By the provider, who'd restored access, in my name only. Then came the last fallout. One I didn't expect. A woman from the community prayer circle knocked on my door. She held a tray of lemon bars. "My daughter's in high school," she said softly. "She saw the way your son talked to you outside. Said it made her sick." I took the tray. She said she hopes she never treats me like that. She left without asking to come inside. She just wanted to say it out loud. I put the tray on the table beside the shadow box, the one with my medal. And next to it, I placed the deed, the real one, the one just reissued, re-stamped, and restored with my name, and my wife's, back where it belonged. Symbolic object, medal plus deed now displayed side by side, behind glass. No longer hidden, no longer at risk. That night I received a voicemail from the pastor. He sounded tired. They came by asking for prayer. Jared and his wife. "She's not doing well. Thought you should know." I didn't reply, because I knew what was coming next. People had started avoiding them, not because I asked, but because silence breaks eventually, and when it does, everyone listens. The next morning I received an alert on my phone. My son had listed the house for sale, under his name. Again. The real revenge didn't come with yelling. It came with paper and signatures and silence. It came on a Monday morning, in a law office that smelled like lemon oil and consequence. "I've prepared the documents exactly how you asked," my lawyer said, sliding them across the polished oak desk. I opened the folder inside, a new will. Updated, stamped, bulletproof it. Named 3 beneficiaries, none of them were my son. None of them were his wife. The first name, my wife, the woman they threw onto the sidewalk like a stranger. The second, Harris County Veterans Assistance Fund, the very same shelter where I had donated my son's furniture. And the third, the First Baptist Church Maintenance Fund, to repair the very steps I once fell from, and where Miss Bernice stood up to clear my name. "Are you sure about this?" the lawyer asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." I signed it, each page, each line, slowly, clearly. The pen didn't shake, neither did I. Then came the property deed. We restored it to its original state, both mine and my wife's name on title. My son's name removed by legal order, permanent. I asked my lawyer one final question. If he tries to sell it again? He can't. It would be fraud now. Criminal, not civil. Good. I returned home carrying a small sealed envelope. Inside, copies of the will, the deed, and a personal letter. I left it on their side of the house. No knock, no words. That afternoon, the sheriff came to escort them out. Not violently, not with cuffs. Just paperwork, but dignity doesn't need noise, she begged first. I didn't know what he was doing, she said, tears streaking through her makeup. I thought we were protecting you. You watched, I said, and you smiled. She lowered her eyes. He didn't say a word. He just stood on the porch with a single bag in hand, as if he hadn't already spent everything I owned. I let them walk away. They didn't turn around. Symbolic object. I opened the shadow box, removed the medal and pinned it to my chest again. not out of pride, but peace. And then, I took one more step. I burned the old will, the one that had once included their names. I didn't do it in anger. I did it with calm, like a man cutting an infection from his own body. As the flames flickered, I watched the paper curl and blacken, until there was nothing left but ash and silence. The next morning, the church called to say someone was sitting alone on the back steps, knees shaking, head in hands. It was my son. He didn't knock, he didn't shout, he didn't demand anything. He just sat there. On the cold stone steps behind the church, knees tucked close to his chest, fingers clenched into the sleeves of a jacket I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. I stood across the lot watching from the shadows of the vestry exit. 3 hours. That's how long he sat before I walked forward. His eyes lifted, red-rimmed, tired, hollow. "Dad," he said, voice dry. "Please, I didn't speak. I don't have anywhere to go." Still, I said nothing. I messed up. I let her convince me. I thought I was protecting what was ours. I thought you were losing it. "You thought wrong," I said. He winced. "I didn't want it to go that far." "But you let it." He looked down. I got caught up. The money, the house, it all started to feel like it was mine. "You mean it started to feel like I didn't deserve it?" He nodded, barely. "I was angry. That you married her. That you moved on. So you tried to erase me." I didn't know how else to feel seen. That sentence landed heavier than I expected. Not because it excused anything, but because it was the first honest thing he'd said in months. "You were already seen," I replied. "I just never thought you'd trade my trust for control." "I don't want money," he whispered. "Not anymore. I want to stay. Somewhere close. I want a second chance." I looked down at the metal pinned to my chest, and for the first time in this whole war, I felt the weight shift off my shoulders. "You want to stay?" I asked. "Yes. You can rent an apartment like any man, work like any man, earn back what you threw away, like any man." His jaw trembled. "So no." "No," I said. "Not the way you mean." He stood, but I held up a hand. "You may visit. You may eat at my table, but you will never again hold keys to my house, my bank, or my body. That part of your life is gone." Tears welled in his eyes. I walked past him and then stopped. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small item, the spare mailbox key. The one he had dropped on the porch months ago when he changed the locks. I handed it to him. "This is not permission," I said. "This is memory, so you don't forget how much it cost to lose your name on this house." He took it with shaking hands. That night, my wife returned home, her bag still dusty from her sister's place, but her smile, full and real. We had dinner, just the two of us. Laughter returned to the table like a long-lost guest. The next morning, the Veterans Shelter posted a photo on their page, a gold plaque installed on one of their new beds, etched with my name and the words, "Donated in honor of those who fought for more than land." The room wasn't packed, but everyone that mattered was there. The town hall meeting was small, 20 chairs, linoleum floors, coffee that had been burning in a pot since dawn. But when I rolled in wearing the suit they hadn't seen since the war memorial 10 years ago, people stood, not because they had to, because they knew what it took to get me back here. Miss Bernice was seated near the front, cane resting across her lap like a scepter. Pastor Jeremy nodded solemnly. Even the mayor, a young woman who hadn't been born when I built the foundation for half, the homes on Main Street, stood and clapped. It wasn't a ceremony. It was a resolution. "Today we recognize Franklin Harris," she said, reading from the podium, "not just for his military service, but for reminding us all what real strength looks like. Holding the line when your own blood turns on you." Applause. Simple. Clean. No fireworks. Just truth. Afterward, I didn't make a speech. I didn't have to. Instead, I returned home, and that's when I saw it. The front mailbox, the one they'd scratched my name off of, now freshly painted. My nameplate, polished and reattached, gleamed under the sun. And just above it, someone had left a small card taped to the metal. "You never left. They just forgot who this house belonged to." No signature, just words that told me the town had made up its mind. I wheeled up the drive slowly, Inside, the house smelled like Sunday roast and old memories. My wife was in the kitchen humming. The photo of my first wife, restored to the hallway. The clock in the living room, fixed. The air itself felt less heavy. I rolled into the den and stopped in front of the shadow box. The metal was there, but now beside it sat the original deed, encased in glass. Underneath it, etched in silver, home is not where you live. It's what you defend. I closed my eyes for a moment, not to pray, to rest. Outside, a car slowed in front of the house, then drove on. I didn't check who it was, it didn't matter. Not anymore. That afternoon, I hosted a small lunch. Veterans from the shelter, Harold, Miss Bernice, the prayer group women who had once avoided my gaze, now bringing pies and casseroles and stories. And in the center of the table, I placed something silent but sacred, the envelope from the new will. Still sealed. Not for them, but for whoever comes next. Because this house, this family, this name, it won't be stolen again. You can evict a man from his house, but you can't evict him from his honor. Have you ever had to fight your own blood to protect your name, your home, or your dignity? Tell us where you're watching from, and if you'd do the same.